I'd like to take you back a little bit to around 1940. I'm sure none of you, you remember it from history books. To a small railroad apartment in Long Island City, simply furnished, with a bathroom out in the hall shared by another family. That still blows my mind. This is the home of Angelo and Clara Amodio, immigrants from Italy with 5 kids, and Grandma, who they brought over from Italy and doesn't speak a lick of English. Yes, that's home-baked bread you smell, and maybe a nice marinara simmering on the stove. And there's a sound, faint, coming from a small back room. Quarter notes, eighth notes, triplets, 16th notes, and then the tough one, the paradiddle. Right, left, right, left, right, left, left. It's the youngest of the 5, Joe Amodio, who my aunt just recently told me was always carried on the shoulder of Angelo. He was the last of the 5, a little later in the line, and I think Angelo was proud to have him up on his shoulder when my dad was 3 or 4, showing the whole neighborhood, I still got it in me. And around 8 or 9, he was practicing on a drum pad. He'd seen one of his older brothers, Vinny, marching in a parade with the Queen's Fife and Drum Corps. And now Vinny played the fife, but Dad was mesmerized by the drums. And he ran up and down the street, marching along with them. He was hooked. It was love at first drum roll. Dad was skinny, sensitive, an easy target for those Gallagher boys, these Irish 12-year-old toughs who used to torment him every day after school, and one day even went so far as to tie him to a tree in some vacant lot, and they were trying to light a fire under his little shoes, until, of course, older sister Terry heard the ruckus and went into the field and sent those Gallagher boys on their way. Luckily, she was there then. She's with us now. The family faced other challenges. Vinny, the fife player, died suddenly of some disease that you can cure now with antibiotics. So the Amodios, they gathered their strength and they moved out to the promised land, Mineola. A big 3-story house with a basement kitchen for Clara and a vegetable garden and fig tree for Pop. And for Joe, sitting alone on the curb, friends who scurried round and took him off down the block to play, and also a room where he could About Dad's vocabulary. You may have noticed that Joe Amodio has a dictionary or a phrase book that's kind of all his own. When surprised or impressed, sacre bleu! When calling out anyone who's a little cheeky or gotten away with something, you pot licker. And then, of course, if you've ever gotten into a debate with him on anything and he has laid down the law, it's case closed, next lot. By the time he hit Mineola High, he excelled in music, now playing actual drums, including the bongos, and there's a great picture over there you can check out. He played in concert band, marching band, and bands of his own. He met Marilyn Harknett after a gig at a PTA meeting, and some weeks later, she invited him to a Sadie Hawkins dance. For Dad, it was love at first kiss on the back stoop of her house in Albertson. He said he suddenly felt all warm and tingly inside, and he just sort of floated all the way back to his home in Mineola. They were high school sweethearts, double dating with big sister Terry and her Walter. Point Lookout and all over Long Island. And then quickly planned a wedding when a neighbor on the draft board discovered that Dad's number was about to be called. 1952, Korea, and young men like Dad were being shipped off by the thousands. About Dad's rules, some rules to live by. Supermarket cashiers should know how to pack a bag. When I was a box boy at King Cullen, yes, Dad, we were taught, I know, the heavy items and cans go on the bottom to stabilize things and the fragile things on top. Garages are for cars, not for junk. You park your car in the garage, not in the driveway, not on the street. And then even something as picayune as manger placement. The three kings should be on the right. They're coming from the east. Now, it took me a while to realize if you're looking at the manger and if you sort of superimpose a north, south, east, west, the east is sort of there on the right. Case closed, next lot. The day Dad left for Korea was the only time he saw his father cry. Dad was a member of the 5th Regimental Combat Team, which fought on the front lines. James Garner served with the 5th, and I always thought if anyone played Dad in a movie, it should be James Garner, plain-spoken, no-nonsense, with a bit of swagger. Dad and a buddy from Detroit survived for over a year when 1 week before discharge, merciless shelling began. The two leapt into a foxhole and spent the whole night crying and holding each other's hand. Saying, "Not tonight. Lord, please. We're almost home. Not tonight." I gotta believe that kind of experience shapes you as a person, as a man, for the rest of your life. Back in the US, Dad got a job with Bell Telephone, starting as a coin collector, driving from payphone to payphone, which was perfect because he had an unerring sense of direction. I know every street on Long Island like the back of my hand. And he did, even when blind. He could still give you directions to any town you wanted to go to or into the city. Maryland, are we through the tunnel yet? Get in the right lane and take the first corner. Mom and Dad bought the house in Hauppauge in 1961, one of the first 3 couples on the block. He was the dapper dresser of the crew, always a suit and tie at church. My God, he even mowed the lawn in dress shoes. They were all young, starting families. And I was just 1 year old when Dad got word his parents were killed in a car accident. Another life-defining moment. But like Korea, like the drum pad, he plowed on. About Dad's obsession. Dad was the greatest New York Giants fan of all time. His nickname, as you heard, Joe Giants. We were longtime season ticket holders with my cousins, dads and kids. Every game, he entered the stadium with a bag containing our lunches and his binoculars case. Inside, little bottles labeled bourbon, rye, and little silver shot glasses. Only for touchdowns, and only for the adults. We kids drank shots of hot chocolate and thought that was great. Of course, during the lean years in the 1970s, the dads sometimes buckled and drank for a field goal or even just a first down. But win or lose, he was the consummate fan. "Where are you going?" he'd yell at the parade of fair weather fans who'd inevitably start leaving the stadium in the fourth quarter if we were losing. "The big comeback! You're gonna miss it! You're all potlickers! The big comeback!" And sometimes he was right. They did miss it. But right or wrong, win or lose, he was there to the end. "You commit to the team," he'd say, "not the outcome. Case closed. Next line." He eventually became an account exec at AT&T, working at Two World Trade before 9/11, luckily. After he retired, he and Mom traveled Hawaii, all over Europe, but it was Dad who suggested the biggest leap. "I want to stand on the Great Wall," he said. So off they went to China. He became more involved at St. Thomas More Church in those years as an usher, greeter. He worked the carnival, loved the lobster bash, and was a proud member of Young at Heart. I think he finally committed to joining in, his mid-80s. The later years were tougher, losing his sight, losing his brother-in-law and best buddy, Walter, too soon. But he came alive whenever he talked about music. The phone company, you see, was just the day job. For decades, he lived for the weekends when he worked as a jazz drummer in clubs and halls and private parties all across Long Island. He would have liked nothing better than to have been a full-time sideman or play in the pit of a Broadway show. But he came from a generation where you don't just go off and follow your dream. You get a real job, steady income to provide for your wife and family. I get to follow my dreams today because Dad limited his. His hard work put me through Brown, and when I started getting bylines in newspapers and national magazines, I made sure to add in my middle initial, signing my name just like Dad signed his, Joseph V. Amodio. "Hey, look, my name's in the paper again," he'd say. Dad taught me what it is to be a showman, to be passionate about something, also what it is to sacrifice and do what's right. It's what a drummer does. A drummer provides a steady beat under the surface. And it's not easy. Remember that paradiddle. Try it with me now, on your lap, on your hips, on a tabletop. It's right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. I say I can't. I took drums for a brief period. It didn't work out as well as it did for him. But it's tricky. Dad kept the beat for as long as he could, and I love him so much for that. You old potlicker, you. Thank you.